thanks for introducing me. I'm very much looking forward to your talk tomorrow morning, because I read that you are going to present the funniest facepalm moments from task forces. And I can assure you that we have some very facepalm moments experienced as well. So yeah, the topic of my talk is crisis communication. Why can I talk about this? I work for an agency who is specialized on crisis management and crisis communication. So we are not like a regular communication agency, but we are the fire brigade that is usually called when there are decisions have to be made under pressure with very little time. And yeah, we help organizations to make good decisions in a short time and to communicate them. And why this is important, I will tell you about in the next 40 minutes. And yeah, luckily we do not only work in cyber incidents or ransomware incidents. We cover all kinds of crises for different kind of enterprises, different sizes, different branches, compliance, regulations, yeah. So it's like all kinds of crises. But during the last months, sadly, the number of calls where we have been contacted considering ransomware or regarding ransomware has increased. I'm a little bit nervous, so please forgive me. And any friendly smile will help me. And if you have any questions, or if I'm asking you any questions, feel free to nod, to shake your head, to look skeptical, and you can also ask some questions afterwards. I'm glad to answer them. Just a few words about myself. Yeah, I'm not going to read out anything or everything that's there. Maybe one thing, because I've talked to 2 people already today who've been active in the military area. I worked on a cruise ship for 3 years, where basically I had the impression that we had a communicative crisis every day, because the expectations of the people on a cruise ship are so high, and you can only fail. And why expectation management is really important, especially in a crisis, is also one point that I'm going to refer. We have been sitting in quite a number of task forces, remote and on-site, and some of them did a good job, some of them didn't. And I'm quite sure I don't need to point this out again, just in case. We do need to talk about the fact that the pressure is real and the danger is real. Here are the latest numbers. I mean, you probably all know that the numbers are rising, and yeah, on average, at least one company in Germany is attacked every day. So this should be enough proof that it's important to talk about this topic. So, my first topic that I wanted to choose was ransomware attack. Just blame the IT, simply because it's the easiest way. And of course, we all know, or you know, that this isn't as simple, and it's not true. But in the way the stakeholders, the internal and external stakeholders see it, it's the easiest way. And what can we do, and what can you do, that this is not the solution to the problem? I'm going to let you know. First of all, a very short theoretical part about the types of crises. There are many more, but these are like the main groups that you can divide the crises into. So you have the victim crisis, you have accident crises, and responsibility crises. And the important thing is the attribution of responsibility by the stakeholders. So, Florian, also in your talk, the summary reads that usually it's communicated that the company has become victim of a ransomware attack. So this already gives you an impression where most companies see themselves. They see themselves in this first type of crisis, in a victim crisis. In a victim crisis. And like I already said, a crisis is always about managing expectations, but not only expectations, but disappointments. Why is that so? All the stakeholders you have in your company, your employees, your shareholders, whoever, and external stakeholders, they have expectations. And it's quite simple if you think of your private life. I mean, if you have a partner, if you have a family, they all have expectations. Maybe your partner expects you to take care of the rubbish once a week or every 2 days. And if you don't do that, then this expectation is disappointed. you have somebody disappointed, and you need to communicate. You can, of course, choose to ignore it, but that's not usually the best idea. So basically, that's the same principle when we are talking about crises. You have to manage the expectations and the disappointment. And one thing which is important to know, you can manage your crisis very well if you don't communicate it properly. The stakeholders will still see it as a crisis. So in theory, a crisis arises if somebody gets the feeling that you're not managing well. And even if inside you think, I've done all the right things, I've made all the right choices, everything is running smoothly again, if the stakeholders think that you're not doing well, then you are in a reputational crisis. So much for the theory. Now, a crisis, I think we can all agree on this, is a state of emergency. And state of emergency means we have little time, little information, little security, and few familiar resources. So I think most of you have experienced this even in everyday work. Everybody with every request is the most important. Their problem is the biggest, it has to be solved first, and this multiplies in a crisis. Has any one of you ever been in a task force handling a ransomware or any other cyber incidents? Great. Would you like to do it again? Did you feel well prepared? Okay. So, like I said, everything happens at once. You have the people that need information. Everything has to be done promptly, despite of unclear facts, and the consequences are often not foreseeable, so you don't know how things are going to be developing, but you still have to give answers. And if you don't do that, like Florian said, it turns into a real risk, because it's okay if you have an incident and you can restore the data within 3 days and nothing else happens. But if the attack continues, or if the restoring takes more time, then you are not in a sprint anymore, then you are doing a marathon. And then you need information and you need to communicate, because otherwise your customers, your business partners might turn away from you, or the employees who think, I've been doing this for 2 months now, and now we're getting new software, and I still have to deal with workarounds, I'm done. And maybe a competitor calls them and says, hey, we pay you more money and you have less stress, why not come and join our company? So these are facts that you still, or that you already have to have in mind, probably not on the first day, but after 2 weeks or 2 months, or even better, in advance. So one of the things that in crisis prevention, we all know there's no glory in prevention, but one of my tasks is to put some glory in prevention, because you can think about many things in advance and it will definitely help you. Usually with us, we are getting called, if it comes to ransomware attacks, on Friday afternoons. Probably that's the same experience as you've had. Yeah, I see some people nodding. And sometimes we are the first who are called, and then we have to recommend partners who can provide incident response, or forensic teams, or the teams, the external experts are already there, and maybe they call us and say, people, we cannot work. We have to go into a task force meeting every 2 hours. There's 20 people discussing things in length, and we have to do things, and we cannot go back to our job. So we can provide the crisis management and help, like Florian said, people to do their job, and we can support in crisis communication by supporting a communication strategy. So these are all the things that you should have in mind. Best case, you have them in mind before. If you haven't, they will turn up anyway. And that's what you have to deal with. That's only an excerpt. That's, of course, not the whole range of tasks that you have to fulfill. But yeah, these are the tasks that have to be accomplished. So first, task force. I'm not going to read everything that's here, but I think you all know what the main tasks of a crisis team are. Some of you hopefully have crisis handbooks. Do you? Do they have like 60 pages? Has anyone ever read them? Has anyone ever practiced them? Are they on the server, which is maybe encrypted? or are they printed out? Do you have mailing lists? Do you have phone lists? Do people know whom to call, how to call them, and whom to call if the person responsible according to the plan is on holidays or sick or has left the company and nobody has cared to replace the names and the contact details? So one really important thing is if you have these things prepared, you have to practice them, and I'm going to repeat this a few times today. Because the biggest goal in a crisis situation is to get one step ahead of the situation. In German, we call it vor die Lage kommen, also something that some of you might know from the military area, and that's really important. You cannot be hunted by the developments, or you can, but that's not the best way to do it. You shouldn't be. You should be always one step ahead. And that's exactly what our crisis managers do. We are called, and then that's exactly what the crisis team does. We look at the situation, then it's like, okay, this is the best case. Might probably not going to reach it. This is the worst case. We will probably end up somewhere in the middle. And how do we get there? What is our strategy? And yeah, this strategy can only be carried out if the regulations around it or the infrastructure around it has been prepared. And this concerns the technical infrastructure as well as the human infrastructure. So it's really important to see, like I said, that you have technical devices, backups for them also. Like we had cases where we had to provide our SharePoint and our Teams to the customer so that they were able to communicate at all because they had nothing. And just one side fact, I've been in many task forces, and the worst moment for me is when people realize that, sorry, the shit has really hit the fan. And that's something that I would like people not to experience. It's this moment when somebody says, yeah, okay, that's bad, but we just write an email to X and Y and then it's going to be fine. And it's like, no, you're not going to write an email because at the moment you cannot do anything. We have lost everything. And really, this is something you don't want to be in this situation. Or if you are in this situation, you want to at least have the feeling, okay, I've thought about this before. I maybe haven't done this before, but at least I'm not running into it totally naked and unprepared. And one really important thing also in crisis teams is that I have the feeling that we are often translators from IT to other departments, because the people are sitting together for the first time. And the external and internal IT experts are talking and talking and talking, and the CEO and the legal and the communications department are sitting there. We understood the verbs, and what does it exactly mean? So we are the people who say, okay, we got that. We understood what you're talking about. Now go back to your job. And we can translate this into communication, internally and externally. You see all the questions. That's like I said, who are the members, how can I reach them, which room can be used. One really important aspect is also, and it sounds weird, but you always in a crisis team have the role of a logistics manager who takes care that you have a room where you can meet, the war room, and not sitting somewhere in a room without windows for 3 days or 3 weeks. And as simple as it sounds, but food and sleep are really important in a crisis. You can survive on pizza for 3 days, but you cannot survive on, maybe IT guys can, but you shouldn't survive on pizza for 3 weeks. So that's an aspect that has to be considered. And Northwave has done a really interesting study on the psychological effects of a ransomware attack. And surprisingly enough, it's the IT that suffers the most, because they are in the eye of the shitstorm, of course, and they suffer the longest, and they have to deal with it the longest. And of course, they also see the biggest responsibility for themselves. They blame themselves, usually. So that's something that you should consider also in such a case. Somehow I tried to see my notes, but now they're gone, but I'll be fine, I hope. Yeah, anyway, let's switch to the next. Deadlines and obligations, I think you're all aware of this. And sometimes the things I talk about, they seem so basic and even stupid, but let me tell you, we had one client that during the case of ransomware attack, and it was not a small business, it was a big company with international headquarters, they were starting in the crisis team to discuss whether they are controllers or processors of data and whom they have to report to. And it's like, guys, you should know that before. You should know in which position you are, which data you are dealing with, how important or sensitive this is. You have to know whether you have to report, you have to know to whom you have to report, and in best case, you've talked to this person before. Because a lot of good crisis prevention means that you are establishing goodwill with all the stakeholders in peace times. So that's really one crucial fact. Talk to the people before, know them before, because this will help you in a crisis. So have these lists of people you have to talk to, know what you have to report and what you haven't. And if you have a good relationship to, let's say, the Landesdatenschutzbeauftragten, you can also maybe ask him, okay, guys, we're head on the water now, give us 20 hours more and then we're going to report, because then we also have a clearer picture. And they will say, okay, fine, we're not going to put any pressure on you. That's something that good crisis prevention can do for you. Regarding the police and the reporting to the authorities, there are, of course, the official recommendations. I do understand if companies say, maybe we're not going to do that today or tomorrow because we're scared that we're going to get even more administrative trouble. And so the advice is, yes, do it, because it's also going to help you. Also, if you're thinking about paying the ransomware, it's always good to have the Aktenzeichen. Yeah, the file number. So, of course, yeah, if after 2 weeks, after the first day, you get an email saying, yeah, we know something about the group, and here is some information about how reliable they are and how you can deal with them. Yeah, sometimes it's not that helpful, so yeah, just know what you have to do and should do, but in the end, every company has to decide for themselves in which time frame and how they are doing it. Internal objectives. I think that every company that we've been to will always remember us, and every IT team that has ever worked with us will remember us for being annoying, because we always ask for a time frame. So time frame is really very, very important, because you have to give the feeling, like I said before, that you know what you're doing, and this includes a time frame and process communication. I will come back to that later, but we have to get control of the timetable to signalize that we know what we are doing, where we want to get, and how and when we want to get there. And of course, we don't say, okay, 3 days and everything will be fine again. But it's important to say, okay, we are here now. We think that we can be here tomorrow or in 2 days, and this will take longer. And our advice is always to communicate more pessimistic, in order not to create more expectations and more disappointments, but to say, okay, this will probably be available in 2 days, and then you can overperform and can deliver it earlier. So that's always be pessimistic, because one side aspect, when we are communicating, and I think that's also something you know from your private life, it's important to get our message out. So we want to be heard, we want to be seen. But you have to consider what the other wants to hear, and where they are starting and coming from, and what they actually understand. And we had one company that had been working together with a supplier, and the supplier had been hacked for the second time. So the company had been has been affected for the second time. And then we were like, yeah, okay, so in this case, we are sure that no data has been published in the dark web, but this time we don't know yet, and how do we communicate it? For me, as a person, as a customer of this company, I don't care how often you've been hacked. I want to know, what does it mean for me? Do I have to do anything? Will my data be soon online or not? So you have to change the perspective and think of what do people, the stakeholders, want to hear and need to hear, and which information do I have to give them. And this might also be, in some cases, less technical. Just a second, I'm really struggling with my notes. Yeah, and one thing that is really important also when it comes to crisis communication in general, also in other cases when it's not about ransomware attacks or something, our aim as consultants or as an agency is not to hide things or to hide the truth. That's not what a good communication strategy is about. A good communication strategy is that you decide how you communicate and you stick to it and you do it. And it has to be transparent and it has to be on a regular basis, because that's what creates the confidence for the stakeholders. One slide, decisions. We could probably have another talk on this as well, about the ransom payment. Of course, many companies or for many ransomware groups, you're not even allowed to pay the ransom because they are on lists that do not allow you to transfer any money to them, because then you are supporting terroristic entities and it's just illegal. And of course, the recommendation of the authorities is also not to pay it because you don't want to support criminals, and it's not clear whether your data will be released or not, or decrypted, or you get the decryptor. But anyways, you should be prepared to think about that. So if your company says, we're never going to pay, no circumstances ever, okay, that's one view you can have. But again, if you are, for example, an IT supplier, and you have customers, and they're big name companies, and 5 of them say, okay, we all demand you to pay because the data of our customers is so sensitive and so relevant, we can under no circumstances allow this to be published online. What are you going to do then? Are you still going to stick to your strategy that you're not going to pay? How are you going to deal with this situation? And whatever you decide, you have to have this negotiation strategy towards the attackers, and you have the argumentation strategy towards your stakeholders, because you need to tell them why you decided. And that is also one very important thing about the roles in a task force. You usually have somebody who keeps the logbook. It's quite a boring job normally, like nobody likes to do the protocols in meetings. I don't think you do. Maybe ChatGPT can do it at some point, or Claude, or whoever. But you have to document the things, because at some point you will be asked in the future, why did you decide like that? And then you can prove that this decision was right for this situation. And even if the circumstances change and the situation changes, you still have to weigh it up against your communication strategy, because the worst thing you can do is, the situation has changed, now let's change our communication strategy. That's when things become bad, because that's when from outside the feeling is, okay, first they were communicating really openly and were sending out emails like twice a day, and then whatever happens, and then nothing can be heard or seen anymore. So document why you do things and stick to your strategy, even if the situation changes or the facts, the conditions change. Yeah, just another small theoretical excursus, but this is going to be really important for you, or for some of you, I think, because it's very helpful. We call it the 4 rooms model, das 4-Räume-Modell, and it's something that also you can prepare already in advance. So you see the incident, and if you have to explain yourself towards your stakeholders, this can really help you, because you have to tell them, okay, phase 1, room 1, what did we do in order to prevent the situation? So we've done, of course, we have all the technical aspects, we have whatever measures in place. We do employee trainings, we do pen testing, we do phishing simulations. All these things will help you to prove that you're not running into this situation totally unprepared. So room 1 That's something that you can always have at hand already in the IT department, which we also request from the IT department to have this ready. And if once you have it, you can only constantly update it, and then there you go. You can give it to the crisis team or to the communications team. Then the incident. Okay, that's something probably Florian might take it up tomorrow in his presentation as well. The statements, you can read, okay, what have we done now? Now that the incident has happened, we have contacted external IT experts. We have reported to the authorities. We are doing this, this, and this. We're working day and night. All the things you are doing now to get over these situations, that comes in this phase 2. Then the next phase is soon the future. Which things did you want to do anyway? And maybe do them already now, because let's face it, when you've lost everything, you're going back to startup level. You might as well now implement Microsoft 365, or you might as well now implement a new CRM. So all these things that will help you, or maybe you had already a whatever crisis simulation planned, all these things can help you in this room 3. And then there is the maximum goal and the utopia. I think you all agree with me that there's no 100% security. And of course, the people, the stakeholders always expect 100% safety and security, but that's not going to happen. And that's something that can also be put in a statement to say, okay, that's what we did so far, now we are reacting correctly and properly. Anyways, these are the things that we wanted to do or already working on doing, but still 100% security is an illusion, and we all know that this is not going to be possible. So this could also go into a communication strategy like this. So I think this can be quite helpful for some of you. And now we come to the stakeholder communication. I already said managing expectations and managing disappointments. Process communication sounds maybe a bit theoretical, but just think if you order something on Amazon or wherever, and you know, okay, it's going to take like 2 weeks until my package arrives here. And within these 2 weeks, you hear nothing. And after 2 weeks, it's not there. And you're like, okay, what's happening? I think you all feel better if on day 2 you get, okay, your order has been placed. Day 4, okay, it's there and there now. And now it's in this store, and now it's getting there, and it's transported there, and now it's in the street next to you, and tomorrow it will arrive. So this process communication really helps you to keep people at stake and at a goodwill. And that's something, it sounds quite simple, but it's not always. Like I said, sometimes the incident is not over after 3 days or 3 weeks. We had one customer who has been hacked last year in November, and I think I was there for 3 weeks in the pre-Christmas time, and we wrote emails to the internal, external stakeholders every day. And that's something, why did we do it? Because we wanted to keep them up to date. We also published the everyday updates on the website. But you really have to show we're still there, we're still managing, we're still good, we know you are expecting things, and we are on it. So this process communication with the timeline that I already mentioned is really important. And also what is really important, you have to differentiate between the different stakeholders. I mean, I think it's quite obvious that your employees or your partners do not want to find out about the cyber incident about Twitter or the newspaper or whatever. So one very important group is the internal stakeholders and the external. But maybe not all external stakeholders or even not all internal stakeholders are affected. Because we had one customer who had different web shops. Some of them were down and some of them worked really well. So you have to check, okay, whom does it affect? Whom do we inform? And actively, and for the others, you have reactive statements. So only if somebody asks, you have some FAQs, and you can reply with one voice. That's also something really important. And you can answer these questions, but you don't go out in an active way. And if you have like the channels that you usually use for communication, you cannot shut them down during a crisis. But this is like it's so simple again. But then we've experienced people who said, oh yeah, well, so let's just not post anything on LinkedIn, and yeah, Instagram, we just shut down the channel for a few days. I mean, you can do it, but you still have to think about what impression it makes from the outside. So, and then if you say, okay, we do have like a lot of channels, then you have to have the manpower or woman power to deal with everything that's coming in. Like we had one big insurance company that we worked together with, and they had to get people from other departments who couldn't work anyway because there was nothing there to work, who were sitting on the phone and answering customer requests and giving out information to them. So that's one thing that also you can think about in advance, like how would we react on the different channels? What would still be possible? Where do we need extra manpower, and where do we get it? Yeah, in this case, in Berlin, that's one thing. I think many companies think now that they can do stakeholder holding statements and also customer communication with ChatGPT. You can, but I think in the end, it's still important that people are writing to people. In this case, in the pre-Christmas time, I was writing so many emails and giving them to the communications department, and I was actively using the solidarity and the feeling of togetherness and helping each other in Christmas time. And it worked, because the customers of the customer, they sent data. So we asked everybody to help, and all the partners and customers were like, yeah, of course, here's our data, and you have to send your invoice here, and we got this and this from you, so the invoice should be this high. So the basic, simple things. But yeah, it's all based on empathy, and that's something that now artificial intelligence, hopefully, can replace within the next few months or years. And in this case, in Berlin, it really helped. The company has been struggling quite a few weeks, and some of the internal processes are still not in place, but they did lose 2 or 3 customers, and these were customers that had really specific solutions. So all in all, their good communication helped them to survive. And that's also one point that is crucial, because I think, I mean, a cyber incident is always crap, but it's especially bad if you're already in a problematic situation, where maybe you have an interims manager, or where you have, if you have any kind of problem already, and then you have a cyber incident, and then communicate about it badly, then this can be the final straw that breaks the neck of the company. In these, I told you to say to check whether all of the stakeholders have to be informed about prioritizing and about the channels. So some classic communication templates are like the holding statement. Probably all of you have seen one or read one. FAQs, that's really important, and they have to be stakeholder specific as well. Like, you have to give different information to the authorities, then to your employees, then to your partners and customers. And some people, of course, will want to know it very detailed. Like, your partners are going to call the key accounters, or the IT department of your partners are going to call and say, can we have a written statement that nothing from you can hop over to us, and that it's still safe to use your products? Okay, so what do you answer? Do you write this or don't? So these things have to be talked through with partners, with lawyers, with people who look at it from a different angle, because the more information you give out, the more information can, of course, be used against you, for example, also from the cyber insurances. So always check which information has to go to whom, and how detailed you do it. We've had the cases where everybody wanted the 70 pages of forensic report. It's like, yeah, thanks for asking, but no. You will get a part of it, and of course we will also mention the indicator of compromise, but always check what is really important and what should be given out and what could do more harm if we communicate it. One interesting aspect also, because we work in a different or in an international environment here, we had one company they had the headquarters in the Netherlands, and we did all the crisis meetings in English. And we very specifically chose the wordings. And then somebody gave it to their secretary to translate it. And it was like, okay, but this phrase, we've been talking about this phrase for 10 minutes because it's really crucial to have this phrase. And then it got lost in the translation. It's like, okay, so our strategy and our wording just has left the building. So that's something also. It's always the details. Like I said, I'm quite sure that most companies have like the first step. But what about the third, the fourth, the fifth, and these details that you have to think about? And I assure you, just as I am nervous now here, you will be nervous in a crisis, and you will not think of the small details. And it needs preparation and exercising to have all this at hand when it gets really necessary and important. Practicing is one good keyword. I've been told that some of you had attended the tabletop exercise yesterday. There are also different kinds of crisis simulations where you can put teams exactly into the situation for 3 or 4 hours and to see, are my structures working right? Are my processes working right? Do people use the tools? Like, you can have a great warning tool, we all had us today in the morning, or information messenger tool, whatever. If people have never used it before, they will not use this in case of emergency. So things have to be practiced and have to be used, otherwise they're going to be useless. So what can you do in advance? You, as most of you probably, the people responsible for IT questions, you can define the quality of data so that in case of emergency you know which has to be restored most quickly and which also reportings you have to do. You can establish and exercise structures, processes and tools, including other departments. And I cannot stress this enough. You have to, I know, okay, no cliches. Anyway, IT, other departments, talk to each other. And I know it's hard, but we are the ones who really, really stress that communication within the company is crucial. And it's not going to help if the people are sitting together for the first time. Nobody knows what the other one's talking about. Nobody recognizes the other person's need. You have to make it a transdepartmental, abteilungsübergreifend issue. And you have to get people in your company or in whatever construct you are working, you have to get them to recognize that this is crucial, because otherwise, exactly the thing that I had said before, let's blame the IT, this is going to happen. Like, you had the money, you had the human resources, and I've always been told everything's doing great. Why are we hacked now? And why is it so important and so expensive to get back in business again? So in order to protect yourselves, you have to talk to each other. And from a strategic point of view, like I said, find a communication strategy, stick to it, also if the situation changes. We are in Bavaria here, we've seen how people did not have a good communication strategy and did not stick to it. So stick to it, apologize probably. It's not enough to apologize. You have to transfer the feeling, coming back to the 4 rooms, that this is not going to happen again. That's what counts. It's not just about writing a nice apology and then just going back to business. You have to convince people that you're doing everything, that this is not going to happen again, and this will keep the faith in your company. So we had this in the beginning, working in a state of emergency. You will have all this if you only become active in worst case. Let's make it better. Let's become active already in times of peace. And If you have any questions, I'm here. And these are my contact details.
Thanks, Janka.